Hey everyone, it's Boogeyman Ben. Hope everyone's doing well and everyone had a nice day. This is going to be the first in a new series that I'm going to be doing here on Boogeyman Ben's Horror Zone. This is something I've been talking about for a while now, and it's something I've been thinking about for a while now, and it's something that I wanted to do quite a while ago, but just never got around to doing it. As people know, I've done like a couple of series on this channel, like the retrospectives on certain horror series. I've done ones on, underrated horror films. I've done the Comic Book Wednesdays. I've tried things here and there. Some have worked, some have not, and I've sort of, if they don't work, I kind of sort of give up on them for a while. Maybe I'll revisit them in the future. But, some of them have really worked, like the underrated horror film series. I think people like that. Where I go through and talk about a certain film series and talk about each film in a series. People seem to like that. But what I haven't done, I've done it, a couple of times I've done it, but I haven't done it to the degree I'm going to do it now. So what I'm going to do is for a while now, and it might not be every video I do, but there's going to be a series, and I don't know how many films it's going to be because I have quite a few to talk about, but I want to focus on one actor. Now this actor is, to me, one of the best actors ever. I was a fan of him as a little kid. The series that sort of brought me to notice him was, of course, the Psycho films. If you haven't guessed by now, I'm talking about Anthony Perkins. Now, this is a still from the Psycho 3 press kit that I have. But in this series, I'm not going to be talking about the Psycho films because I've already talked about them for many, many videos. I've talked about them many times. I've talked about Psycho 1, Psycho 2. I did a retrospective on the whole series. I've talked about Psycho 2 many times. I talked about the Blu-rays that came out. So what I'm going to be talking about, what I'm going to focus on in this series is some other films that Anthony Perkins did that are horror-related or suspense-related. As most people know, he started his career in the 50s with the movie The Actress. He was known as kind of the leading man heartthrob. Did The Actress. He did Fear Strikes Out. He did Friendly Persuasion. He did A Tall Story with Jane Fonda, which was her first movie. But after he got cast in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, he was then offered kind of the quirky more like, not so much the leading man. He was always sort of given like these kind of darker roles. And, it's almost like Norman Bates, shadowed his entire career. And he did Psycho when he was in his mid to late 20s. He was 27 when he shot that movie, so he was very young. And after that, he kind of, he had done, he eventually embraced the Norman Bates character again and did Psycho 2, 3, and 4. But he did some other really great films between Psycho and Psycho 2, and he also did some great films after Psycho 3. Some of the films I have are actually on tape. They've never released them on DVD. Maybe they're not the greatest films, but, I always felt like his performance shined through in every one of these films. So today I'm going to be starting with one of the films that he did towards the end of his life, towards the end of his career. This is the movie that he did between Psycho 3 and Psycho 4. The movie I'm going to be talking about today is Edge of Sanity. So this is going to be part 1 in this series, and each video that I do, and I'm not going to be doing them like in order of when they came out, I'm just going to be talking about a particular film in his filmography that I feel like focusing on. Today it's going to be Edge of Sanity, and I hope everyone enjoys this. Please stay tuned. So as you can see, I have it on VHS as well as DVD. Now the VHS version, you can see it right here, says it's unrated. It says right there that it's not rated. But the DVD says that it's rated R, when in fact it is the unrated version of the film. So this film would come out in 1989, and I believe it was a limited release. It wasn't in theaters from when I remember as a kid, because Anthony Perkins actually did the Arsenio Hall show back in the 80s, and he talked about this film because they were also starting to develop Psycho 4 at the time. But he had done this film, and I kept waiting for it to come out in theaters because I wanted to see it in the theater, but it never came out in my city. I think it was just one of those limited releases. So pretty much the film stars Anthony Perkins as Dr. Henry Jekyll. You have Glynis Barber as Elizabeth Sarah Martha Thorpe as Susanna, David Lodge as Underwood, and Ben Cole as Johnny. The movie was directed by, I'm going to try to say this right, Gerard Ciccone. And the writers were J.P. Felix, who did the screenplay, as well as Ron Rayleigh. And it's based on the novel by Robert Louis Stevenson, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Pretty much what the plot of the film is, and it's very different because in the original, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde movies, it was always a potion that would turn Henry Jekyll into Mr. Hyde. In this, it's cocaine. So the plot is, when Henry Jekyll's experiments with cocaine have gotten out of control, he transforms into the hideous Jack Hyde. As Hyde, he searches the London streets at night for his prey in whorehouses and opium dens. Police can't catch him, but he has nothing to lose but his mind. So as a kid, this was one of the first non-psycho movies I saw Anthony Perkins in. There's another one, and that's one that I'll be talking about next in this series, but this is one of the first ones I ever saw of him where he wasn't playing Norman Bates, because at that time there just wasn't a lot of access to some of his older movies. Most of the video chains when I was a kid, or during this time in the 80s, they were mom and pop stores. They didn't have a lot of these older films like, a Blockbuster or a Warehouse or, Hollywood Video would have. So when I was able to rent this movie, and I remember renting it from the Warehouse in the same packaging, and I think that's where I bought it from, when they were selling these previously viewed tapes, I was so excited to watch this, and I think I rented this quite a few times. And it's a very different film. It's a very sleazy film, and if I recall, I could be wrong on this, but I believe the director did pornographic films prior to doing this film, and it does feel kind of like that. There's a lot of nudity in it. There's a lot of full frontal nudity, both male and female. Perkins is very over the top as Jack Hyde. He's very disturbing looking. He plays him this it's almost like he's got greasy. His hair looks greasier and darker, and his face is paler because it's the cocaine and everything. And that was really different for me because it's it was just usually I was used to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the potions, and I thought that was always cool that he'd drink this potion and turn into a monster. And this was a real drug. In the 80s, everybody was doing cocaine. That's all you would hear about. So it was kind of odd for me to see one of my idols, doing a role like this. But, it's like Anthony Perkins was a great actor. Yes, there's times that he plays a character over the top, but it works really well in this film. When he's, Dr. Jekyll, he's very nice and refined, and he does a great job. And the woman who plays his wife, they have a very believable relationship in the film. I thought it really came off well. But the main reason to watch this film is to see him transform into this monster of Jack Hyde. And I really think that this film is underrated. I know that it got ripped apart by the MPAA, and the critics thought, critics were just ripping Anthony Perkins for even doing such a film. And, I always thought it was kind of unfair because, he was typecast as a horror, movie actor because of Norman Bates, and then he would do movies like this, where he was playing these kind of over-the-top characters, and then the same critics that were kind of pigeonholing him into this genre and saying that's all he could do were then chastising him for just doing that. So it was kind of a lot of bullshit. But again, that's a critic for you. But I really like this film. It's one of my favorite Anthony Perkins films. It's very dark. It has a very disturbing ending. It was an ending I wasn't expecting, and it was one that stunned me as a kid. And, maybe not so much, for some people now with the types of films that are coming out and the endings that are kind of shocking. But, in 1989, this was a pretty shocking ending and a pretty shocking movie for a 15-year-old to watch. But yeah, if I had to give this movie a rating, a rating on my scale of 1 to 10, I would give this movie a 9, 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed the film. I think it's twisted. It's got this disturbing imagery. It's very sleazy. A lot of sexual atmosphere in it, and Anthony Perkins doing a terrific job playing the duality of Henry Jekyll and playing this very over-the-top Jack Hyde. I just think that if it's a movie you haven't seen, I think you owe it to yourself. If you're an Anthony Perkins fan, you want to watch a lot of his other films. If you're a fan of the Psycho films, you owe it to yourself to check this film out. So yeah, I have it on. Like I said, I keep showing the tape because it's a little bit easier to see, but it should still be available. Dark, but I got it quite a while ago. I think I got it about 10 years ago. But yeah, Edge of Sanity, a very underrated Anthony Perkins film. I definitely recommend it to fans of his work, just to see him in something else that's a little bit more, depraved and deranged than the Norman Bates character. Norman Bates seems very normal when you watch him in this film. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about Anthony Perkins, one of my heroes. He always will be. One of my favorite actors. He's in my top 3 of favorite actors. I absolutely loved him. And I'm looking forward to sharing more with you guys, more of my opinions on some of the works that he's done, some of his lesser-known films that I have in my collection, some on VHS, some on DVD, ones that I've picked up kind of just, that I've wanted to watch and were able to find at, secondhand DVD and VHS and Blu-ray stores. So I'm happy to do this series. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I invite people to share. If they've seen Edge of Sanity, tell me what you think about it. And as always, thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys look forward to this new series. And, if I don't do these, back to back to back, at least I'm going to do 1 or 2 a week going forward until I get out all of the films that I want to talk about from Anthony Perkins in the horror suspense genre that he did. So thanks so much, everyone, for watching. Take it easy. Have a good evening. Peace.